The rain was falling like silver threads from the dark clouds, covering the ruined city in mist and sorrow. Tall metal buildings stood broken, their glass faces cracked and glowing faintly with dying lights. The smell of smoke, rust, and wet dust filled the air. In that endless rain, a small girl ran barefoot through the empty streets, her tiny hands clutching a glowing vial of blue liquid. The bottle was the size of her palm, but it shined like a star in her grip. Her name was Lyra, a young alien child with pale blue skin and bright violet eyes filled with fear and determination. Behind her, heavy boots echoed on the wet pavement. The soldiers were chasing her, shouting orders, their metal armor reflecting the neon lights. "Stop! Drop the vial," one of them shouted. But Lyra kept running, her heart pounding, her thin body shaking with cold. She knew if they caught her, she would never see her mother again. The medicine she held was forbidden. It belonged to the ruling class. Ordinary people like her were not allowed to touch it, not even to save a life. She turned a corner, slipping on the wet ground. The vial almost fell, but she caught it just in time, pressing it close to her chest. Her breathing was ragged, her legs weak. The sound of thunder mixed with the roar of engines above, drones flying through the rain, searching with red beams of light. She hid under a broken archway, trembling, whispering softly to herself, "Just a little more, Mom. I'll bring it home soon." Through the rain, a tall human soldier appeared, his face hidden under a black helmet. Captain Rian, known for his discipline and cold heart, followed her trail. He had seen many thieves before, many liars, but this one was different. Small footprints, light and hurried, leading into the shadows. He slowed down, scanning the area, his rifle raised. Then he saw her, a small figure crouched behind a broken crate, clutching something glowing blue. "Stop!" His voice was calm but firm. Lyra froze, her whole body stiff, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't run this time, maybe because her legs couldn't move anymore. Rian stepped closer, his boots splashing in the puddles. The glow of the vial reflected in his visor. He had orders to retrieve stolen medicine at any cost. But something about the trembling child made him hesitate. "What's your name?" he asked. Lyra didn't answer, her lips quivering, her hair sticking to her wet face. Rian sighed and lowered his weapon slightly. He remembered the war, how hunger and sickness took children on both sides. "Do you know what that is?" he asked again, pointing at the vial. Her small voice came out shaking. "It's medicine." "And why did you steal it?" he asked softly. She looked down, clutching it tighter. "It's for my mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. For a moment, the rain seemed to stop, the city silent except for her trembling words. Rian blinked. Her answer hit him harder than he expected. He had seen criminals, smugglers, rebels, but never a child stealing for love. His heart, once hardened by orders and loss, cracked slightly. Lyra stood up slowly, her knees shaking. "She's sick," she said. "She can't breathe anymore. They said this could save her." Tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks, glowing faintly in the light of the vial. Rian looked at her, really looked, and saw not an enemy, not a thief, but a desperate daughter. His hand trembled as he lowered his weapon completely. He could hear his commander's voice in his head, "No mercy for thieves." But in front of him was no thief, just a child trying to save her family. A flash of lightning lit the sky, and for a moment their eyes met, soldier and child, duty and love, law and compassion. Then the thunder rolled again, and Rian took a deep breath. "Where is your mother?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked up, shocked. You won't hurt her?" He shook his head slowly. "No." She hesitated, then nodded, her small fingers pointing toward the east. "Over there, in the old hospital," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Rian looked in that direction, through the rain and smoke. A faint light blinked from the ruins of an ancient building. He holstered his rifle. "Come," he said. "Take me to her." Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" she asked, her voice full of both hope and fear. "Really?" he replied, his tone steady but his heart heavy. As they stepped into the storm together, the city lights flickered, as if the universe itself watched in silence. Somewhere above, the drones circled again, searching for the thief who had stolen from the Empire. But what they didn't know was that tonight, even a soldier would cry for a child who only wanted to save her mom. The rain grew colder as they walked through the empty streets. Lyra held the glowing vial close to her chest, protecting it from the storm like it was a living thing. Captain Rian walked beside her, his rifle lowered but his senses alert. He knew every patrol route, every drone pattern, every rule he was now breaking. If command discovered he was helping a thief, he would be executed without question. But somehow, that didn't scare him anymore. Lyra looked up at him as they walked, her voice small and trembling. "Why are you helping me, soldier?" she asked. Rian didn't answer right away. For years, he had lived by orders, by discipline, by silence. He had seen worlds burn, seen innocent people suffer in the name of peace. But tonight, in the middle of this ruined city, something inside him felt human again. "Because," he finally said, "your mother deserves a chance." They crossed an abandoned bridge, half collapsed and covered in vines. The sound of water echoed below, mixed with the distant hum of flying patrols. Lyra stumbled, and Rian caught her by the arm, steadying her gently. "You're freezing," he said, wrapping his military cloak around her small shoulders. She looked at him with wide violet eyes, surprised by his kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. The word pierced through his chest like light in darkness. As they moved deeper into the ruins, Rian's visor blinked, a signal. His command center was calling him. He hesitated, then switched it off. For the first time in his career, he ignored an order. "Just a little more," Lyra said, her voice weak but full of hope. Rian nodded, following her through the maze of broken walls and flickering lights. Soon they reached the old district, a place where the Empire had dumped the sick and the poor. Buildings were nothing more than skeletons of steel and stone. Every corner smelled of rust, smoke, and forgotten lives. Rian had patrolled these zones before, but never noticed the quiet suffering hidden here. Now he saw everything: small fires burning in metal barrels, families huddled under plastic sheets, alien children watching silently with hollow eyes. He felt a lump in his throat, but said nothing. Over there, Lyra pointed to a collapsed hospital, its symbol faded but still visible under the rain. They ran inside through the broken glass doors, their footsteps echoing. Inside, the air was thick and cold. Old machines hummed faintly, powered by weak batteries someone had scavenged. Lyra's breath came fast, her body shaking with exhaustion. Rian guided her down the hallway, his light flashing across the cracked walls. She finally stopped near a small room with curtains made from torn blankets. Inside lay her mother, pale and motionless on a thin bed of cloth. Her blue skin had turned gray, her breathing shallow. "Mom!" Lyra cried, rushing forward, holding her mother's cold hand. The woman opened her eyes slowly and smiled faintly. "Lyra, you came back," she whispered, her voice fragile as wind. Rian stood at the door, watching silently, his heart tightening. He had seen death many times, but never like this. Never so quiet, never so undeserved. Lyra showed her the vial, her hands trembling. "I got it, Mom. The medicine. You'll be okay now." Her mother looked at the glowing bottle, tears filling her weak eyes. "Lyra, you shouldn't have," she whispered, coughing hard. "She risked her life," Rian said, stepping closer, his voice deep but gentle. The woman turned her head toward him, surprised to see a soldier standing there. "Why?" she asked softly. Rian hesitated, then replied, "Because she reminded me what real courage looks like." He knelt beside them, taking out his medkit. "I know how to use it," he said, opening the vial carefully. He mixed the blue liquid with purified water, injecting it into the old machine beside the bed. The machine beeped weakly, but the medicine began to flow. Lyra watched every drop enter her mother's veins like a prayer being answered. Her tiny fingers held her mother's hand tightly, whispering, "Please work. Please work." Rian stayed quiet, his eyes on the monitor. Minutes passed like hours, the rain outside slowing to a soft whisper. Then, slowly, her mother's breathing steadied. Her color began to return, faint but visible. Lyra gasped, smiling through her tears. "She's breathing better." Rian looked away, blinking rapidly, not wanting her to see the emotion in his eyes. For a long moment, the three of them just sat there, a soldier, a child, and a mother, bound not by blood or law, but by something greater. Outside, lightning flashed again, and the sound of engines filled the sky. Drones, scanning the area, searching for the thief. Rian stood up slowly, checking his weapon. "They're coming," he said quietly. Lyra looked at him in panic. "You'll leave us?" He shook his head, his voice calm but firm. "No, little one, not tonight." He stepped toward the door, ready to face whatever came. Behind him, Lyra whispered, "Thank you, soldier." Rian didn't turn around, but he smiled. Somewhere deep inside, he realized that for the first time in years, he was doing something truly right. And outside, under the endless rain, the Empire's machines moved closer, unaware that one human heart had already begun to rebel. The night sky rumbled again as the drones drew closer. Their red lights cut through the rain like angry eyes searching for guilt. Rian stood near the doorway of the ruined hospital, his armor dripping with water, his rifle ready but heavy in his hands. Behind him, Lyra held her mother's hand tightly, whispering small prayers to any god that still listened. The weak machines in the room beeped softly, giving the dying building a heartbeat of its own. Through the broken window, Rian could see them, black armored soldiers moving through the mist. They were his unit, the same men he had trained with, the same ones who would shoot him without hesitation if they knew the truth. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm inside his chest. He had been a soldier his whole life, but tonight, he felt more like a guardian. He looked back once and saw Lyra's violet eyes staring at him, filled with fear, trust, and something else, something he had forgotten long ago. "Hide behind the bed," he whispered, "and keep silent." Lyra nodded quickly, pulling a torn blanket around herself and her mother. Rian stepped into the hallway, his boots echoing on the cracked floor. He pressed his hand against the metal doorframe and whispered to himself, "Just a little longer." The first drone flew through the window, scanning the room with a humming red beam. Rian lifted his rifle and fired, the plasma bolt slicing through the air. The drone exploded in a flash of blue sparks, lighting the hallway for a second. Outside, the soldiers shouted commands, their footsteps drawing closer. Rian ducked behind a pillar, reloading, every breath sharp in his throat. "Captain Rian," a voice echoed through the calm. "We tracked a stolen vial to your sector. Report your position." He didn't answer. Static hissed in his ear, then silence. He knew they would come in shooting. He also knew he wouldn't let them near the girl. The front doors burst open, and 3 soldiers entered, rifles raised. They moved carefully, scanning every corner. Rian stepped out from the shadows, his weapon aimed. "Hold fire," he commanded, his voice cold and steady. The younger soldiers froze when they saw him, recognizing their superior. "Sir, command says the thief is inside," one of them said, confused. "Did you neutralize the target?" Rian hesitated, rain dripping from his helmet. He looked straight at them and lied. "She's gone," he said. "The vial was destroyed in the blast." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. "But the scanners are malfunctioning," Rian interrupted sharply. "Do you doubt my report?" The men straightened instantly, saluting in fear. "No, sir," they replied, stepping back. Rian's voice remained calm, but inside he was shaking. He was standing between life and death, not for himself, but for a child. He ordered them to sweep the upper floors and left the ground level secured. Once they left, he shut the door again and leaned against it, his breath heavy. His reflection flickered in the cracked mirror nearby, a soldier covered in scars and rain, staring back with eyes that no longer belonged to the Empire. Lyra crawled out from her hiding place, her voice trembling. "Are they gone?" Rian nodded slowly. "For now." Her mother coughed softly, still weak, but breathing better. Rian knelt beside her and checked her pulse. "The medicine is working," he said gently. "She'll recover if we can keep her safe." Lyra smiled for the first time, a fragile smile that glowed brighter than the vial itself. Outside, thunder rolled again, the Empire's sound of power. Rian knew they couldn't stay here long. More drones would come, and next time, he wouldn't be able to lie his way out. He removed his ID badge and handed it to Lyra. "Take this," he said. "If anything happens to me, show it at the checkpoints. It will mark you as family." Lyra looked at the card, confused. "But why are you doing this?" He paused, searching for words that had meaning. "Because you reminded me of someone I lost," he whispered. "Someone I should have protected." She reached out and touched his hand. Her small fingers warmed despite the cold. "Then maybe," she said softly. You are protecting her now. Rian looked away, his throat tightening. He stood and walked to the door again, his armor humming as it recharged. The rain outside had slowed, but the danger had not. He turned back one last time. Stay hidden until sunrise, he said. Then go east. Follow the old tunnels beneath the market. They lead outside the patrol zone. Lyra nodded, wiping her tears. Will you come with us? He smiled faintly, a tired soldier's smile. I'll try, he said, knowing deep down he might not. As he stepped into the storm again, lightning painted his figure in silver light. The Empire thought of him as just another soldier. But tonight, he was something else, a man who chose mercy over command. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen by him, a surveillance drone recorded everything. Its lens flickered red, sending data to headquarters. The Empire had just learned that one of its soldiers had cried for an alien child. The storm had slowed, but the danger had only begun. Above the ruins, a silent drone hovered, its red lens blinking as it transmitted the footage across the stars. Inside the Empire's orbiting command ship, a group of officers watched the recording in silence. Captain Rian's face appeared on the screen, standing between a dying alien and the child he should have executed. The room filled with whispers, shock, and anger. One general slammed his fist against the table. He betrayed the code, he growled. A soldier showing mercy to the enemy. Orders were sent instantly. All units were to locate and capture Captain Rian, alive if possible, dead if he resisted. Back on the planet's surface, Rian had no idea the net was already closing around him. He walked through the flooded alleys, the rain dripping from his armor like tears. He stopped for a moment under a broken neon sign, watching its blue light flicker. He thought about Lyra and her mother, hiding in the hospital. He thought about his own daughter, the one he lost during the first invasion. A child who had the same trembling hands, the same wide eyes, the same brave heart. For years, he had buried that memory under duty and silence. Now it returned, cutting through his chest like a blade. He whispered to himself, I won't lose another, and started walking faster. He needed a way out for them, a safe path beyond the city wall. At the old comm station, he broke into the control room, sparks flying as he hacked the console. The screens lit up with red warnings, access denied flashing again and again. He overrode the code, his fingers steady. He pulled up the security map, tracing patrol routes, drone paths, and open tunnels. There, beneath the eastern market, an old sewer passage leading to the outer wasteland. It would be dangerous, but it was their only hope. Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind. Captain Rian. He spun around, rifle raised, but froze when he saw who it was. Lieutenant Kor, his former trainee, standing at the door, weapon drawn. Sir, Kor said slowly, command knows what you did. Rian's jaw tightened. Then you know why. Kor shook his head. You saved the enemy. Rian's voice was calm. I saved a child. Kor hesitated, his eyes flickering with conflict. You taught me loyalty, he said, but not this. I taught you to be human, Rian replied. And sometimes, that means breaking orders. For a moment, silence filled the room except for the hum of rain. Then Kor lowered his gun slightly. You have 10 minutes before they arrive, he whispered. After that, I can't stop them. Rian nodded. That's all I need. He grabbed the data chip with the tunnel coordinates and turned to leave. Kor, he said quietly. If they ask what happened here, tell them I was already dead. The lieutenant looked away, his voice low. You always were, sir. Rian disappeared into the storm again, the sound of engines growing behind him. He reached the hospital just as Lyra peeked from the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. You came back, she said. I promised, he replied with a faint smile. We have to move now. He lifted her mother gently, wrapping her in his cloak. Lyra held the vial close to her heart, its glow soft and steady. They moved through the rain-filled streets, avoiding drones and soldiers. Rian guided them through narrow alleys, his map flickering on a small hollow pad. Each turn brought them closer to freedom and closer to discovery. Lyra looked up at him, whispering, Will they hurt you? He didn't answer, just placed a hand on her shoulder. Keep walking. At last they reached the entrance to the old market tunnels. Broken stairs led into the dark, the smell of metal and dust rising from below. Rian glanced back, lights flashed in the distance. voices shouting his name through comm speakers. Captain Rian, surrender yourself to command authority. He smiled faintly. Sorry, command, he muttered. Not tonight. They climbed down into the tunnel, water dripping from the ceiling. Every sound echoed like a heartbeat. Rian moved ahead, scanning for movement. Lyra helped her mother walk, whispering soft words of comfort. After a while, her mother stopped and said weakly, You don't have to do this for us. Rian turned, his eyes soft. Yes, I do. He looked at them both, their faces lit by the glow of the vial. In another world, you would have been my family, he said quietly. Above them, the city roared with engines and thunder. Below, in the darkness, one human led. 2 aliens toward hope. He didn't know if they would make it. He only knew that for the first time in his life, he was no longer serving the Empire. He was serving something greater, compassion, love, and the fragile beauty that made humanity worth saving. And far above, in the Empire's war room, an officer whispered the words that would change everything. Send the hunters. The tunnels stretched endlessly beneath the ruined city. Cold water rippled around their feet as they walked, the sound of dripping pipes echoing through the darkness like ghostly whispers. Rian's flashlight cut a thin beam of light across the wet walls, revealing faded warning signs and rusted doors. The air smelled of metal and oil, mixed with the faint sweetness of decay. He led the way carefully, checking every corner, every turn, his ears tuned for the sound of pursuit. Behind him, Lyra walked slowly, holding her mother's hand. The older woman was weak, but alive, her breathing steadier, her eyes no longer hollow. Every now and then, she looked at Rian with silent gratitude. He could feel it even without words. It was the kind of gratitude that carried weight, the kind that reminded him he was doing the right thing. Above them, the Empire's hunters moved through the streets. Massive machines scanning every inch of the ruins. Their searchlights cut through the rain, following the signal of the stolen medicine. They were ruthless, programmed to kill without hesitation. And now, they had Rian's name coded as a traitor. Lyra looked up at him as they walked, her voice small but filled with worry. Will they find us, soldier? Rian didn't look back. Not if we move fast, he said calmly, though his voice carried a hidden tremor. He could already hear faint vibrations in the tunnel walls, the echo of approaching machines. The Empire was close, too close. They reached a junction where the tunnel split into 2 dark paths. Rian paused, checking his map, the small holoscreen flickering weakly. The left path leads to the outskirts, he said, but it's longer. The right one? Lyra asked. It's faster, he said, but unstable, the walls might collapse. Lyra looked down, holding her mother's hand tighter. Which one will keep us safe? She whispered. Rian smiled faintly under his helmet. There's no safe path, little one, only brave ones. He took the right tunnel, the shorter path. As they moved deeper, the air grew warmer and the ground trembled. Old power lines sparked above them, and the sound of distant engines grew louder. Rian realized the hunters had entered the tunnels too. He turned, kneeling down to Lyra. Listen carefully, he said. If anything happens, you keep moving forward, don't look back. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. You're coming with us. Rian smiled softly. I'll try, but if I can't, you run, understand? She nodded, though her heart didn't believe it. Moments later, the tunnel behind them shook violently. A red light flashed through the darkness. The hunters had found the entrance. Their heavy metallic footsteps echoed like thunder. Rian raised his weapon, the blue plasma humming as it charged. He looked back at the 2 figures, the child and her mother, and whispered, Go. They hesitated, but then began to move, disappearing into the shadows ahead. Rian turned toward the noise, his expression calm. He aimed down the corridor just as the first hunter appeared, a towering machine with glowing crimson eyes. Its voice was metallic and cold. Captain Rian, surrender. Your loyalty has expired. Rian didn't reply, he fired instead. The plasma bolt hit the machine's chest, exploding in a burst of sparks. The tunnel filled with smoke and light. 2 more hunters advanced, their guns lighting up the dark. Rian rolled behind a pillar, returning fire. He hit one in the shoulder, another in the leg, but they kept coming. Unauthorized mercy. One droned, punishable by death. He laughed bitterly under his breath. Then let's die for the right reason. The ground trembled as he fired again and again. Every shot echoed through the tunnel like a heartbeat of rebellion. Far ahead, Lyra heard the explosions and screamed his name. Her mother held her tight, whispering, "Keep moving, my child. That's what he wants." Tears ran down Lyra's cheeks as she ran faster. The tunnel lights flickered and dimmed, casting them in shadow. Behind them, the sound of battle faded, replaced by a single distant blast that shook the floor beneath their feet. When silence finally came, Lyra stopped, breathing hard. She looked back into the darkness, her voice trembling. "He's gone, isn't he?" Her mother didn't answer. She simply pulled her close. In her heart, she knew that somewhere behind them, Rian had made his choice. He had stayed to stop the hunters, to give them the time they needed to live. And as the tunnel ceiling began to collapse, sealing the path behind them forever, a single echo rolled through the air. The faint hum of Rian's last shot. It was not a sound of defeat, but of defiance. A sound that whispered through the ruins, carried by the wind to the silent city above. A human sound, brave, stubborn, and filled with love. The tunnels behind them had collapsed, leaving nothing but dust and echoes. Lyra stumbled out into the open air, her mother leaning on her, exhausted but alive. The rain had stopped, leaving a thin mist over the ruined city. The sky above was dark, but slowly turning to gray as dawn approached. They looked around. The streets were empty, the Empire's patrols scattered after Rian's defiance. For a brief moment, the world felt quiet, almost safe. "Are we free?" Lyra whispered, her violet eyes searching the horizon. Her mother shook her head weakly. "Not yet, child, but maybe for a little while." They moved cautiously, following the map Rian had given them. Through narrow alleys, over crumbled bridges, and across flooded streets. Every step carried the memory of the soldier who had saved them. She had never met anyone like him, and in her heart, she promised she would not forget. Far above, the Empire's drones hovered like vultures. They scanned the city relentlessly, but the tunnels Rian had chosen had thrown them off course. The child and her mother were invisible for now. They entered the Old Waste District, a barren place where only the desperate lived. Broken machines and rusted pipes lined the streets. Yet among the ruins, small gardens had sprung up, signs of life stubborn against decay. Lyra stopped, staring at a patch of green. "Mom, someone lived here." Her mother smiled faintly. Even in the darkest places, life finds a way. They reached the outskirts of the city, where the wastelands began. A harsh land of dust, rocks, and wind, stretching far into the horizon. Rian had promised this path would lead them to safety, to a village hidden beyond the dunes. They walked for hours, the sun rising slowly, burning the mist from the streets. Lyra's mother leaned on her shoulder, weak but recovering. Lyra kept the vial close, knowing that every drop could mean life or death. Behind them, in the ruins of the city, whispers began to spread. Rumors of a soldier who had defied the Empire to save a child. The story grew, a single act of mercy reaching every corner of the colonies. In the heart of the Empire, officers argued, how could one man betray us and still survive? No one realized that he had already made his choice. To protect life, to honor humanity, even if it cost him everything. As Lyra and her mother climbed the first sand dunes of the wasteland, she paused, looking back toward the city one last time. "I hope he's okay," she whispered. Her mother held her hand tightly. "He is, in ways we can never see." The wind blew across the dunes, carrying their words far and wide. And in the echo of the wind, it felt as if the universe itself had heard. Somewhere, a human heart continued to fight. A single soldier had reminded the galaxy of what it meant to be alive. The village Rian had described was near, a cluster of domes hidden behind rock formations. People there were waiting for survivors, offering food, medicine, and shelter. When Lyra and her mother finally reached the first dome, they were greeted with cautious smiles. The villagers did not know their story yet, but they sensed hope in the child's glowing eyes. Lyra handed over the vial for safekeeping, her small fingers trembling. Her mother rested against her, finally breathing easy. In the distance, the city smoldered. Rian's name was being whispered in secret corridors. The Empire would hunt him forever, but the story had already spread. A single act of courage, a single act of humanity, had begun to change hearts, even in a galaxy ruled by fear. And Lyra, holding her mother's hand, felt the weight of that hope. She knew they had survived not only because of the medicine, but because of a soldier who chose compassion over command. Somewhere in the ruins of the city, Rian watched the horizon. He had lost their sight, but not their trust. He smiled faintly, wiping rain and dust from his face. The Empire could take everything from him: rank, honor, life. But it could not take what he had chosen to protect: a little girl, her mother, and the truth that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons, but the courage to love even in the face of death. Years passed since that night under the storm. Lyra grew taller, stronger, her violet eyes carrying the fire of courage Rian had shown her. Her mother recovered fully, tending to the small village that had given them shelter. Yet, every year, on the anniversary of their escape, Lyra returned to the edge of the wasteland. She stood on the highest dune, looking toward the distant city ruins. She whispered softly, "Thank you, soldier," though she did not know where he was, or if he had survived. The Empire never stopped hunting. Rian's name became a ghost in the files, a traitor in the eyes of authority. But his story spread quietly among those who had seen mercy, who had remembered the child he saved. Small acts of rebellion, hidden moments of humanity, began to echo across the colonies. Soldiers whispered of one man who chose compassion over orders. Children in secret corners learned that courage was not only in weapons, but in protecting life. And somewhere, Rian's choice inspired countless others to question the rules they had blindly followed. In the village, Lyra helped others, teaching them to heal, to hide, to survive. She spoke little of the soldier who saved them. Yet every decision she made, every act of kindness she offered, carried the memory of that night. Her mother watched her, proud. "He gave you life, Lyra, and now you give it to others." Lyra nodded, her eyes misty. "I will never forget him," she said, her voice trembling. And in that vow, she understood something larger. Humanity is not only what one survives, but what one leaves behind. Far away, in the ruins of the city, Rian moved quietly among shadows. He had survived the Empire's hunt, hiding in secret zones, feeding the weak, helping the forgotten. He never sought recognition, never asked for thanks. But in every life he saved, in every act of mercy, his spirit lived. Some nights, he would hear the faint echo of a child's laughter in the wind, and he would smile under his helmet, knowing that somewhere, his choice mattered. The galaxy shifted slowly, imperceptibly. One act of courage, one soldier's mercy, had begun to ripple through worlds and generations. Children grew with stories of a blue-skinned girl, a brave soldier, and a mother who lived because someone chose love over law. Communities began to hide medicine from greedy hands, to teach hope instead of fear. And the Empire, though vast and cold, began to tremble in whispers, for they could not erase what hearts remembered. Lyra stood on the dune one final time. The wind carried sand across her face, the horizon bright with a new dawn. She lifted the vial, now empty, a symbol of sacrifice and survival. And she whispered, "We live because someone believed in us." Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, smiling softly. "Yes, child, and that belief will carry us farther than any weapon ever could." Far below, in the ruins of a city that had seen so much death, Rian watched from the shadows, hidden but alive. He could not return to the Empire. He could not reclaim his old life. But he had done what mattered. He had saved humanity's spark in the eyes of a child. And in that spark, he saw the future, a galaxy that could remember compassion, even among the stars. The wind carried his silent vow across the wastelands. A vow that humanity, at its best, could shine brighter than any empire. That love, courage, and sacrifice were the true power of a soul. And somewhere, in the heart of every child who would hear this story, Rian lived forever, not as a soldier, not as a hero of command, but as the human who cried for mercy, and in crying, taught the galaxy what it truly meant to be alive.